So here we are with a very important panel today. Last year, we discussed the 2015 Addis Ababa Convention's call for action to deliver the 17 SDGs by 2030 by defining a global framework to align the financing flows and policies with economic, social, and environmental priorities. Now, the three most critical questions that underlie the drive to finance sustainable development are: how do we drive more resources towards the goals? How can we make sure they are going where they are needed the most? And are they being used in the most effective way? The view that the financing gap is symptomatic of a business model gap and can prove to be a good starting point to reduce costs, address the risks, and catalyze private sector solutions are areas we need to address. Now, when SPM was first announced in 2014, there was a sense of urgency to start the process rolling with the government's intent on providing sanitation solution for each citizen under the Open Defecation Free banner. This was successfully achieved by 2019. The country announced and indeed has been acclaimed across the world for its success in this area. And the primary funding, as we know, was provided by the government. In 2020, under SBM2, the Swachh Bharat Mission 2, and the goals of ODF++, or Sustainable ODF, Open Defecation Free, the recognition of the private sector's role in ensuring the future success of the mission has come to the fore. Technology, commercialization initiatives that the government has started under Swachh Bharat Mission at its first phase could only be achieved with the use of long-term technology solutions, as well as making these facilities self-paying. How can we ensure that they are sustainably financed going forward? And the private sector can leverage these learnings for the benefit of the country. So now, with the recent announcements of SBM2 and the guidelines by MoHUA, the Ministry of Urban Affairs, and the stated objective of involving the private sector to support the Swachh Bharat Mission 2 initiatives, either through technology and also funding, the government's desire is to enter into more and more private-public partnership programs. And for these PPP programs, large infrastructure projects undertaken, for example, for treatment of solid and liquid waste across urban and parts of rural India, are going to require financing solutions involving the private sector. Now, the very manual processes that continue to exist across the sanitation value chain, specifically the area of waste management, those too need technological solutions to make them viable over the long term. And here we need equity, we need debt, we need risk capital. And in many cases, in fact, with COVID, we have seen a heightened urgency for these solutions, as in the case of manual scavenging. So with this framework, I want to embark on a very important discussion where we have some of the most critical areas to discuss, and in fact, a panel which has one of, and amongst them, the most eminent people to bring some of this forward to you. So let's start with the first question, which is on Swachh Bharat Mission 2014 focus on the build aspect of sanitation, where the government determined that proper toilets were provided to all Indians across the urban and rural landscape. And there were several schemes that were put forward to encourage citizens at all levels to build these toilets. These schemes extended from basic grants of 12,000 rupees and incentives under schemes such as the Swachh Bharat Mission Phase 1 to build the new toilets, to top these up from the 15th Finance Commission to enhance existing toilets and include bathing areas or a second toilet. The government worked with local banks to extend the extra credit at nominal rates. And there were many other players that came, microfinance institutions, etc. We have with us today the Chief Executive of the Indian Banks Association, Mr. Sunil Mehta. And I would like to first ask him how he believes the banking industry has responded to the government's call for helping create a strong sanitation infrastructure in India. And where do you, Mr. Mehta, see this progressing in the future?
Thank you, Nana, for asking a very relevant question. In fact, Indian banking system is fully aware about the need for sanitation across the country and has really supported the Swachh Bharat Mission Phase 1 during the 2014 to 2019. During this period, the banking system has come out with the funding of the toilets, which were being built up in the schools, and roughly 74 crores were provided by them under CSR funds to various schools for creating these toilets for boys and girls. Simultaneously, the banks have extended personal loans to various borrowers for availing these benefits under the Swachh Bharat Mission. So like 12,000 was being provided by the government, but there will be some cost escalations. So that were being funded by various banks under the personal loan schemes also. Thirdly, the basic infrastructure that was created for sanitation, it includes the solid and the liquid waste disposal systems. And many of the corporates have come forward to create such systems, and bankers have funded them. Somehow, these efforts could not get the much traction because somewhere the collection efficiencies of the municipal system on which the revenue collection of a banking system is dependent for repayment of such loans, that was not very efficient. But so long as the personal fundings were there, I think that the masses have responded very well, and the banking system has extended support there. RBI has also provided a special dispensation. They said that all social infrastructure up to an extent of 5 crore can be classified as a priority sector lending, and which for like projects in the sanitation are also covered into it. Even up to 10 crore under the medical infrastructure is covered for priority sector lending. So these incentives in the banking system driven by the government and by the regulator have been duly supported by the Indian banking system. Now, since sanitation is basically a personal need, this will require a personal funding, this will require a government support, and that's why the government has come out with the phase second. Swachh Bharat Mission phase second is now in offering, and this will continue up to 2024. So during this period also, banking system is really willing and looking for the opportunity for funding to the personal needs of the people who really want to build on this transport by providing them the convenient loans in the form of personal loans and the easy liquidity. The limited point is entire banking system, since we are dealing with the public funds. So our conscious approach is that it should be lent in such a way that the repayments are also received in time, so that we can recycle this fund and the infrastructure can go up. So both these things go hand in hand, where the collection efficiencies are good, where people have utilized their money properly and they have repaid their loans, that has provided a encouragement to the banking system for further funding to the social infrastructure, especially for the sanitation sector. I do believe that this sanitation facility will not only provide a social benefit or a physical benefit to the masses, this will provide a lot of economic efficiency to the entire system. Because if the environment is sanitized, there will be less number of people availing sick leave, there will be more work hours available for work, there will be lesser distraction even for using conveniences. So all these activities together will definitely facilitate the entire ecosystem, and which is definitely is a facilitating thing which a bank will like to add on. So Indian banking system is definitely ready and is look forward where the revenues can be generated or can be supplemented through the existing cash flows by the existing borrowers, and the banking system can lend to them, maybe in the form of creation of these entities, maybe in the form of personal toilets, maybe their enhancement, and the different facilities are being extended by the banking system to the masses for making this Swachh Bharat Mission a grand success.
So looking at financial inclusion has been one of the mainstays of the Indian economy, with increasing microfinance opportunities becoming easily available for people living at the bottom of the economic pyramid. We've seen NBFCs, self-help group promoting institutions, and SRLMs are all working alongside mainstream banks to help clients build, retrofit, and upgrade the sanitary infrastructure. So as we continue to support the whole mission in this regard, it becomes even more critical that there is further convergence of government policies and creation of a market-led approach to complement these long-term solutions. And we are finding that this vibrant approach is creating a sustainable solution for both households and the emergence of the WASH enterprise. I'd now like to ask Manoj Gulati, Managing Director of Water.org, and someone who has huge experience in this field and has been a very important partner of the India Sanitation Coalition. No better than Manoj to share with us their organization's experience in creating innovative microfinance opportunities for the rural and urban poor. Manoj, over to you.
Thanks, Dana, for the kind introduction. And to begin, on behalf of Water.org, I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate ISC for achieving 5th edition of India Sanitation Conclave. During this period, we have grown so much, and both collectively and as a collaborative force, in addressing the entire sanitation chain from build to treat. And I feel so confident that the ISC, through its thought leadership, can now address more complex issues under SBM2 and JGM guidelines. So before we go ahead, the question, I answer your question, I wanted to actually, if you permit, show a very quick video of a young lady in Gondia district in Maharashtra. And her name is Divya Patle. And this is her story.
महिला आर्थिक विकास महामंडळाच्या ताईंनी शौचालय बांधण्यासंदर्भात माहिती दिली. मग आमच्या घरी कर्ज काढून शौचालय बांधला. शौचालयाबरोबर आम्ही आरो पण विकत घेतला. शौचालय बांधल्यामुळे आम्ही सुरक्षित आहोत. आज आम्हाला बाहेर जावं लागत नाही. संसर्गजन्य रोगांपासून आता आम्हाला कसलीही भीती नाही. जर आम्ही बाहेर जात असतो तर वेगवेगळ्या लोकांच्या संपर्कातून आम्हाला कोरोनाची भीती राहिली असती आणि माझ्या परिवारात सुद्धा प्रसार झाला असता. आज वॉटर फिल्टरमुळे आमच्या घरचं पाणी साफ आणि सुरक्षित आहे. आज आम्ही साफ पाणी पितोय, त्यामुळे आमचा परिवार सुरक्षित आहे. आता आम्हाला बाहेर मुळीच जावं लागत नाही. सगळा परिवार शौचालयाचा वापर करतो आणि शुद्ध पाणी पितो. आता मला पाण्यासाठी बाहेर नळावर पण जावं लागत नाही. वॉटर फिल्टर आणि शौचालयामुळे मला आणि माझ्या परिवाराला खूप सुविधा मिळाली. महिला आर्थिक विकास मंडळ आणि water.org यांची मी खूप आभारी आहे. त्यांच्यामुळेच मला
So having shown that video, this is what the change is happening in today's Maharashtra in rural India. So far, over 33 lakh women have utilized self-help groups and joint liability groups, which are linked to microloans for meeting their water and sanitation needs to transform their lives of over 1.5 crore people. This has led to over 5,000 crores of debt capital being mobilized for WASH impact. The SHG-led women are now complementing government efforts by taking greater responsibility for toilet repair, maintenance, toilet upgradation, retrofitting, additional bathing facilities, household roof rainwater harvesting projects, water storage projects, water filter projects. So as you can see, the entire WASH ecosystem is being addressed with their help and through their own efforts. We often find people in many villages saying, पहला शौचालय सरकार ने बनाया, दूसरा समूह के मदद से बनाया. When a family takes a small loan, we find in increased behavioral change, long-term commitment to maintaining the toilet, and a sense of pride and satisfaction that has made something for that they have made something for themselves. We find water and sanitation loans are repaid on time, and the people are becoming increasingly Atmanirbhar. The third key component is creation of market space, which thanks to ISC involvement, along with its partners such as ASCI, UNICEF, CEPT, and Toilet Board Coalition, is now unlocking this side of the business. It's important that all three components which require financing are played side by side. In order to solve SDG 6, the world needs $192 billion over the next 9 years, and no single type of funding will be sufficient to solve the issue. even if 10 to 20% of the funds come from mainstream financing, it will create a huge impact to meeting the demand. I encourage all to unlock the financial resources along with revised government policies supporting such collective solutions. Again, my best wishes to ISC on this special occasion.
Now, centuries of habit, accompanied by social taboos such as toilets, are being considered or were considered as unclean and hence needed to be hidden away or put into locations far away from the house. And all of this has required change. We've seen that the need for sustained education covering several generations of families living together is a very complex process. And actually it's different in different parts of the country. And we need to deal with this in a defined and patient manner. The second and third areas of the sanitation management chain require individual and community commitment, and to encourage the usage and proper maintenance of the facilities built, whether in private homes or public spaces, a consistent behavioral campaign was required, which could ensure that people understood why this was important and indeed therefore used and maintained the toilets in the right manner. Now, the government supported, as we know, huge behavioral change campaigns, and these needed to be amended as we went along. There were many of these programs at various grassroots levels. And as the messaging began to take a much more long-term approach, structured, professionally managed, we saw campaigns such as Dettol Banega Swachh India emerge to the fore. And the funding for these activities also began to come from CSR funds of the private sector, who were keen to respond to government's Swachh Bharat call. At the India Sanitation Coalition, we extended the program called Swachhta Doots, which was developed initially by the Hindustan Unilever company and their team. And given the success that they had faced through this program, which was run in and around their factories, we worked with them and then took the program forward to other corporate partners to develop employee engagement programs so that the employees' work was also one in the factory, but also in the communities in which they lived outside the factory, so that they could spread the message of Swachhta and why it was necessary not to defecate in the open and how toilets needed to be maintained. One of the pioneer corporates to drive this Swachhta Doot campaign was DCM Shriram. I'd like to invite Aman Pannu, Head of Corporate Communications and CSR at DCM Shriram, to share their experience in creating Swachhta Doots in their organization. And we at the India Sanitation Coalition would like to celebrate their success. So here we are, over to Aman.
Thank you, Naina ma'am, and a very good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to share a case study of DCM Shriram's WASH program called Shriram Swachhagrah. So I'm going to share some slides on this. So our WASH program is called Shriram Swachhagrah, and it aims to contribute to the Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin. We are working on constructing and renovating toilet blocks in the government schools of Kota, Hardoi and Lakhimpur Kheri, and also individual household toilets of Bharuch. With this program, Nashi, when we did our baseline, our need assessment, our focus has always been on how can we improve the toilet usage in the schools, in the communities, and also looking at strengthening and maintenance of these toilet blocks. Behavior change, Nashi, is very, very key to our program, because along with our development of the infrastructure, we look at the behavior change piece also. And seeing that this is a very scalable project, it is about sustainability, about replicability. And this program is being implemented in 3 different states also. So Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Gujarat. And how do we make sure that even when we're talking about the infrastructure development, we are working with partners who are maintaining the entire uniformity of the building norms. When I talk about behavior change, I think we are fortunate that we've got very good partners that we are working with We've been working with Finnish Society, with Mamta HIMC, with Vinobha Seva Ashram, and specifically for our knowledge partnership, we've been working with India Sanitation Coalition. So I'm going to talk about some of the different initiatives that we've taken up. So when we talk about behavior change, we have put that into 3 different buckets, right? The institutional development is very, very key, very important for us, that when we are doing the baseline, we need to see if the child cabinets are working, if the school management committees are working, getting on green workers, and then looking at strengthening of the SMCs, strengthening of these child cabinets, working on how do you make sure that the toilets are clean. Newer initiatives, I think our partners have got on board, like Swachhata monitoring boards. So in these schools, the child cabinets make sure that there are boards on which every day when the children come in the morning, they are putting ticks if the toilets have been cleaned, if the maintenance of the cleanliness across the school campus is also happening, have children wash their hands, have their nails cut. So doing all of that is something which is actually building on the maintenance and monitoring mechanism. The other interesting thing that we've done is also looking at training, which is very, very important, where we are talking about the Anganwadi workers, where we're talking about the ASHA workers. So how do you make sure that there is ongoing training on behavior change with them also, because they are going out and speaking to the communities. The other aspect which we have led on our Shriram Swachhagra program is an employee volunteering program called Swachhata Sathi, where we have India Sanitation Coalition as our knowledge partner. And here what we've done is that for 6 months till our implementation projects partners are there, they work with the schools and the community on the entire behavior change piece. And once they move out of those particular villages or those particular schools, our Swachhata Sathis are actually the ones who, along with the ISC material, which has been created specifically to work with both the school level and the communities, they work with these communities for another 1-year period. So this entire program is actually continuing for a period of 2 years, where 1 year we are working with our implementation partner, and 1 year our employee volunteers are actually going to these schools and not only doing the IEC material, but also making sure that the maintenance, the scalability that we have looked at. So is the monitoring still continuing? Are the SMCs still operational? Are the child cabinets still working? All of that is also something which becomes a part of the framework of the Swachhata Sathi. And that is where India Sanitation Coalition had come in and helped us actually make this entire program, not looking at only the IEC piece, but also seeing how do we look at the monitoring of this particular program. Another initiative which we added was a pilot project called the Pink Rooms, where we are working in Kota in a few schools. We've started this, and these are like medical camps where we have rooms which have been created for young adolescent girls when they have their periods. They actually go and they have a bed, they have sanitary pads available there, a lot of IEC material which is there in terms of what is it that they need to take care of. So the hygiene aspect, the nutrition aspect, when they're looking at the entire menstrual cycle for them, that is taken care of in this Pink Room concept. And I think not last, but the operation and maintenance is very, very important, that once the organization gets out of these schools, how do you make sure that the funding of these schools continues for the maintenance? So we've created something called a Swachhata Kosh, which is like a bank where the money is collected by the SMC, by the child cabinet. So it could either be through the Gram Pradhan or actually going to the communities and collecting funds. And this fund then is added on to the government fund which comes, and looked at how do you make sure that the green workers are coming on a regular basis? How do you make sure that maintenance of the schools is happening on a regular basis? So with this project, we've actually touched 450 plus schools in our 3 districts in Kota, Hardoi and Lakhimpur Kheri, about 360 plus individual household toilets. And when we talk about the behavior change framework, that about around then 60,000 school children and community, we've already worked with them. And Swachhata Sathi across our organization, where we've done our projects in Kota and in Lakhimpur Kheri and Hardoi, we already have our employee volunteers who are going to the locations. We are shortly going to be starting this program in Bharuch also when we talk about the individual household toilets. Now, specifically, I think the COVID period actually looked at recalibration of the entire project, where we said, how is it that we have to now work with the communities? Because naturally, the schools were not open, so you could not go to the schools. So we shifted our focus from a school-led total sanitation to a community-led total sanitation, because the implementation partners or our feet on ground had to go and speak to the children, but the children then were in their houses. So our focus moved into an ODF plus format, where we were looking at formation, activation of the Nigrani Samitis. The conversation then naturally was on COVID-19 prevention. It was on behaviors that need to be maintained. So as an organization also, we provided sodium hypochlorite, provided sanitation kits to them, made sure that the children were aware of behavior that is important for them to maintain during COVID. The trainings which were going on all moved into a virtual mode. So the SMC trainings, the children training, all of that, we took that into an online mode. And I think the facilitation of that through the implementation partners was also very, very agile. So the entire last year and this year also, now schools are opening up. So we are going back to the schools, I think, but there is a learning that we've had that instead of only looking at the schools, it's important to look at the communities also, because a lot of sanitation work that we are doing is happening through the communities. There has to be a focus on ODF plus also. We work with a lot of good partners in this period, like Project Bala and Tata Trust, where we did an entire MHM program. So it was about recalibrating the entire Shriram Swachhagra program and say, how do we work more with our communities? How do we make sure that this happens? Currently also, we are going to start work again with India Sanitation Coalition on seeing how we can again go back to our communities through our employee volunteers, get more volunteers to come on through this project and work with our communities. Thank you so much, everyone.
So we have behavioral change programs, but these need consistent push over several years. And if they are to be effective, it becomes important that organizations like NABARD come forward, and they indeed have developed programs in different regional languages to reach out to more than 2,000 villages in several states across the country. On October 2nd, 2020, NABARD launched a nationwide program to reach out to the rural communities to drive home the message of hygiene, sanitation, and treatment of waste. I'd like to invite Mr. Devasis Padi, CGM NABARD, to share your experience on the recent sanitation literacy campaign. Over to you, Mr. Padi.
Thank you, Madam, for inviting me to speak. See, this campaign which was run by NABARD, this was basically the brainchild of our chairman, Dr. Chintala, who realized that NABARD should be a big player in water, sanitation, and health sector. So coming to specifically the question raised by Naina regarding behavioral change programs, we consciously conducted the program in more than 2,000 villages, very interior pockets of the country in 25 states of the country. This was done in tribal areas, watershed areas, and other project areas of NABARD, because we were familiar with the people there. And we used all sorts of methodology to reach out to the people. We had a film which was translated in 13 regional languages. We had brochures, we had jingles, and Nukkad Nataks through which we covered these villages and conducted the campaigns there. Another important aspect I would like to say is we also realized that the funding in the wash sector is not considered to be a business proposal by many banks. So simultaneously, NABARD also developed a project and a product for which NABARD provides refinance. And we also had meetings with the bankers at the SLBC level, at the BCC level, and the BLBC level to say that this is a bankable project, even if the Reserve Bank of India had announced it as a priority sector lending. The disbursements were not picking up. So this was also an important aspect in our campaign. Finally, I would like to say that this campaign by us has started giving very good results. We are seeing the attitudinal changes in the field level, in the project areas, and we are also seeing that the disbursements under this are picking up. Lastly, I would like to say that this project is also will help. Just to remind that NABARD had supported the government of India under the Swachh Bharat Mission project. And we thought that this funding under this project will help maintain the infrastructure which has been created under the project. And we in NABARD believe that wash sector is going to be the next important sector for the country, and we will continuously work for the development of the sector. Thank you.
Now, we've heard many examples on how wash financing is a complex area and also how it is open to innovation. The nature of investment, the kind of impact that would be the outcome if the initiative is successfully implemented, and most importantly, the ability for the investment to engender further similar investments, the replication therein, requires that we not just look at classic financial instruments, but also at new ways of approaching these issues. One of my favorite organizations in this regard is Grameen Capital, which is experimenting successfully in creating financial instruments that are customized for the development sector. They have understood the need of the hour is not the large ticket, complex financial arrangements alone, but that we need several intermediaries delivering individual pieces of the financial instrument. So what is required is something simple with a modest ticket size, and more important, with clear-cut impact outcomes that can be measured transparently and also therefore create confidence for the investor to enable the investor to keep coming back and investing. In order to add some light to this aspect of financing, I'd like to invite Royston Braganza, CEO of Grameen Capital, an old colleague of mine from my HSBC days, to share with us what drove Royston to consider WASH a likely recipient of an innovative financial structure, how it works, and what are the likely benefits. So Royston, over to you as you innovate for sanitation financing.
Thank you, Nana. I think, we are really at an interesting time. One of the things that I like is a quote which says that there are decades in which nothing happens, and then there are weeks in which decades happen. And we seem to be in those weeks, and we need to be able to use this opportunity that we have, what COVID has provided us, to be able to look at, the world is talking about build back better, but in the WASH space, how do we use this opportunity to further the agenda of water, of sanitation, of health? And one of the things that struck us when we were looking at the SDGs, and you can see the list behind us, was saying, if this is a $30 trillion need globally, then looking at pure philanthropy or government interventions is not enough. How do we bring mainstream capital? How do we bring the corporate sector? How do we bring fund houses to look at investing in this space? And we created a product called the SDG Impact Bond. So particularly for goal 6 in water and sanitation, say we would look at a bunch of social enterprises with very clear themes in terms of water conservation or sanitation goals, and say, we will provide you the funding, we will use investors to provide the funding, on the back of which we will have very clear matrices in terms of impact deliverables, and then identify outcome funders who are interested in that goal. So for example, when we did a goal 7 bond, we would look at those who are interested in clean energy. When we did a goal 2 bond, we would look at someone who's interested in food security, farmer income, farmer productivity. And we would tell them, rather than spending money in projects, could you be the outcome funder if these metrics are met? And they found it very interesting, because here they were paying after the outcome is met, they were paying for success, and the amount they pay is equivalent to the coupon or the interest rate on the bond. So the social enterprise has to service the loan, they repay the debt, they get a track record in terms of repayment and debt servicing. The corporate gets an opportunity to use their CSR creatively to be able to incentivize this, or a philanthropist or others. So for example, if they were doing a $1 million project in the past in, say, women's empowerment for goal 5, today what that 1 million can do is, say, become a guarantee to the bond. Grameen Impact or another co-investor would fund that. The enterprises would still meet those objectives of women's empowerment. And then a CSR would pay for that outcome. So the original 1 million can then use for a second project and a third project. And so we believe that being catalytic is critical in this time. And one of the opportunities that we have looked at through the SDG Impact Bond is to really broad base family houses, fund houses, private equity, impact investment, to bring them all together into one instrument. And we think that could be really powerful as the way forward. So the policy interventions are critical. What we do need to see is a common taxonomy across different regulators. And I'll give you a simple example. One of the big reasons that microfinance was able to scale dramatically was because microfinance was included in the RBI's priority sector definition. And then banks were energized and excited to lend to the space. What we need to see is a common taxonomy. So today, RBI under its list has a very different PSL list. SEBI under their Social Venture Capital Fund has a very different list. Ministry of Corporate Affairs under their CSR rules has a very different list. And what we are saying is try and create a common set of lists, probably reflecting the SDGs or whatever else, but keep it consistent so that we are able to pull across these various parts of capital a seamless connect. And so at a policy level, that is one big change that is needed. And the other is to allow CSR funding to be able to be used for impact bonds. Today, if a for-profit company, is there who has met, say, Y percentage of increase in water table, or Y% increase in sanitation, or reduction in ODF, or open defecation, then CSR is sort of bashful to provide funding to a for-profit company because it doesn't count under their CSR. But that would be really the ideal place for CSR to contribute, because that every single rupee is paid after success is achieved. So we need to create either a new instrument or add social SDG impact bonds under the list of what is kosher for CSR. And I think that will unlock significant amount of capital. Because take, for example, Unilever is building 2 or 3 Suvidha centers, and they spend 3 crores to do it. We would tell them, you put that 3 crores as a guarantee. We will build those centers, finance those centers. The social enterprise will build those centers. We will find other CSR to pay once those outcomes are met. And then the same 3 crore of guarantee we could use to build 3 more centers, and then do the same model again, and then 3 more centers and the same model again. So you could probably build 15 centers and circulate that capital, 5 times. So the ability of building these instruments out, and therefore the power is in creating not one big $100 million bond. And that's what people in London and New York are trying. And we are trying probably just the opposite. We want to build hundreds and thousands of small SDG impact bonds. In fact, I want to create an SDG impact bond factory for every toilet facility, or for every skilling center, or for every solar unit. to be able to build instruments so that we can create that fund. And then, of course, set up a social stock exchange where we can list these at the right time and build scale that is needed. Thank you.
As we look at the Swachh Bharat mission's focus going forward on sustainability and treatment of waste, very important missions, and one which we have been working at for a while now at the India Sanitation Coalition, we come to treatment for both grey and black water, both of which form part of municipal waste. Now, grey water, as we all know, emanates from kitchens, laundries, parks, and black water from toilets, both requiring different kinds of treatment. And both types of wastewater can be applied to an urban or rural context if properly treated. So as we look at the treatment and use of these waters, particularly in a country like ours where we are always so water short, it's not just about the treatment, but also where this ends up, not just in terms of use, but also ensuring that we do not pollute the existing water bodies. So looking at this and how the SHG-driven programs have been launched across several states. We've seen this in Orissa, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Telangana, all of which work towards the twin benefits of ensuring accountability for proper sanitation within the community, and at the same time allowing for a loud and firm voice to the government to ensure that demands are met. So as we work collectively on improving this, we know that we have more problems in the urban area. Accountability with the ULBs is an issue, and that government has built several sewage treatment plants and fecal sludge treatment plants. However, we also need responsible citizens and communities that come forward to aid in ensuring that these function well and that we are part of this change process. To better understand the urban conundrum, I'd like to invite Dr. Meera Mehta of CEPT, no better than her, who has worked for years in these areas, to give us an understanding of how urban municipal waste is paid for. Why is the government seeking to involve the private sector? And where all do these challenges continue to lie? Meera, you're a specialist in the space of financing, and I'd like you to throw light upon innovative financing for these aspects, the collection and emptying and all that's critical and neglected in this entire chain. So, Meera, over to you to share your wisdom and experience with us today.
Thanks, Naina, for asking me to speak at this important event on this very important topic. Over the past years, India has made very good progress on making our cities open defecation free. However, now we will need to pay attention to the full sanitation service chain to achieve the safely managed sanitation, which is envisaged under both the Swachh Bharat mission, the newly announced Swachh Bharat mission 2.0, as well as SDG 6.2, which also talks of safely managed sanitation, and to which India is a signatory. This means that ensuring safe treatment of all the fecal waste is absolutely essential. In most small and medium towns, this will happen largely through on-site sanitation systems. Now, over the past 2 to 3 years, there has been tremendous progress in taking up fecal sludge treatment plants all over the country. And nearly, over the last 2-3 years, nearly 400 FSTPs have become operational. But we must recognize that these FSTPs have largely been funded through public funds. There is very little private financing that has come into funding of FSTPs. But one area where in the full sanitation service chain that private financing is critical is in the transportation part of fecal sludge. That is emptying and desludging of septic tanks and carrying this through safe measures and safe means to the FSTPs that have been constructed. And this is critical. This is, we often refer to as the missing middle of the sanitation service chain, and more attention is needed. Interestingly, this is an area where there is actually a lot of private financing has come in, either through the SMEs themselves or through some innovative measures that have been taken up in some cities in Maharashtra. In fact, we have been supporting the city of Vai in Maharashtra to take up the scheduled desludging services through a public-private partnership. So I would like to share a small video that captures the story of Vai, where private financing has come in through a PPP arrangement, but for providing a city-wide and very inclusive service.
Why is representative of a large number of small and medium towns that are below 100,000 population.
So when we started work in Vai, the ground situation was that the septic tanks were there in Vai, but they were not being desludged regularly. They were being desludged at an interval of 8 to 10 years. And then that septage was taken to the dump site where it was being dumped in the open.
Why Council recognized that sanitation is a public service that has to be provided to the citizens.
A council resolution was passed to implement scheduled desludging, involve private operators, levy sanitation tax, and allocate land for a fecal sludge treatment plant.
There was not much experience in India in what we tried to introduce in Vai, what is called scheduled desludging, which means that all tanks will be emptied once in 3 years in Vai.
वाईचे 3 झोन केलेले आहेत ABC, आणि एक झोन झाला की सेकंड झोन, थर्ड झोन. दर 3 वर्षातून प्रत्येक सेफ्टी टँक हा उपसला जाणार आहे.
नगरपालिकेनं टेंडर काढलेलं ते आम्ही भरलं आणि ते आम्हाला मिळालं. शेड्यूल एम्प्टिंगमुळे ना आपण एका घराच्या खर्चामध्येच 7 घरांचा खर्च त्यातच होतो. त्याच्यामुळे नगरपालिकेला पण फायदा, कंपनीला पण फायदा, आणि गाडीचं जे पेट्रोल आहे ते पण बचत होते.
So what this council did, that they did an outcome based contract wherein the private sector based on the performance would be getting paid. So in case they attain only 70% of the target, they were only getting paid for the 70%.
The contract also introduced specific measures to ensure that the service was provided in an appropriate manner. We worked with the local government in Vai to introduce the notion of an escrow account. So a tripartite agreement between the local government, a local bank, and the private sector that was selected. The escrow account has 3 months of additional funding always available as a reserve fund. So this makes it easier and hopefully likely to reduce the delays in payments that may happen from the local governments.
We realize that financing is very important. State government, the private sector, the CSR route from corporates. This is the capital expenses, but we recognize that the operational expenses essentially come from the cities themselves.
The city levied a sanitation tax, and against that they are provided this service once in 3 years.
We've named this as a performance-linked annuity model that has been developed for schedule emptying.
मे 2018 पासून शेड्यूल डिस्लजिंग रेग्युलरली चालू आहे. त्या अर्थाने एका वर्षामध्ये 2000 इतके सेप्टिक टँक स्वच्छ केले जाणार आहेत, जे पूर्वी संख्या फक्त 100-150 वगैरे होती वर्षाला.
Vai is the first town in India to implement scheduled desludging and treat collected waste in a safe manner.
So the video hopefully captured the kind of attention that is needed on this missing middle or the desludging services. And I think it also highlighted the fact that it is possible to both provide it as a public service by local governments, but through a PPP arrangement. And therefore, private financing of these desludging services, especially in terms of the capital investment needed in trucks, becomes actually possible. And we need to focus on this aspect much more as we go ahead. The Vai example also shows that it is, if you have this kind of a PPP arrangement, then it can also be done in an inclusive and equitable manner. There are no user charges of the usual type, but in fact, sanitation tax is being used. And because it is linked to property tax, it can actually be used in a very equitable manner, and the poor actually receive this service at very, very low cost. So this is something that is very important to keep in mind. The Y example shows excellent results. Despite the pandemic, it has achieved significant results with 90% plus septic tanks that have already been emptied. The Y example has been taken up by many other cities in Maharashtra. Kolhapur Municipal Corporation has also introduced a scheduled desludging services, and many other cities in Maharashtra have shown interest in taking up similar activities. Even in at the national level, MoHUA and through SPM 2.0 guidelines, scheduled desludging has become a major activity that needs to be taken up. So I want to highlight that this kind of private financing of sanitation service is possible and needs to be taken up, but this will need to be backed by considerable capacity building efforts that are needed to support both local governments as well as private service providers, and which can be taken up through PPP models as the video illustrated. This means that good, well-balanced contracts, transparent tenders, performance-linked payments, which are backed by digital monitoring systems, all these are required to make these kind of arrangements successful. And this is where capacity building efforts will be needed. And lastly, I wanted to bring in that we can also include self-help groups and women and support them to become entrepreneurs with private financing coming in. So these are new ideas that need to be taken up as we look to private financing for sanitation, and particularly safely managed sanitation.
At this point, I'd like to invite Vikram Gandhi of Asha Impact to share his views on where he sees organizations such as his playing a role in helping resolve issues highlighted by SEPT. Now, Vikram is an old colleague of mine from my Morgan Stanley days. He comes with a huge background in finance, and now as a professor at the Harvard Business School, his mind, his intellect, his exposure to the global issues in this space are invaluable. So Vikram, over to you for us to hear from you what you think we need to do in the country.
I would like to thank the India Sanitation Coalition, FICCI, and NANA for having me at this annual conclave. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. The issue of getting financing and innovative financing into the whole area of sanitation and water in general and wash in general is both an extremely important endeavor and a very challenging one. On the demand side, as has been said, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs number 6, we need to actually triple the amount of capital flowing to this, nearly to about $100 to $120 billion annually compared to where it is today. And that the governments and municipalities, both local and central governments around the world, just don't have that kind of capital allocation given all the other pressures on their budgets. So there's essentially a big demand for this capital and a potential supply gap. The other issue of supply is that it's very hard to build a business model around WASH, largely because sanitation and hygiene are viewed as most citizens around the world, and water by most citizens around the world as a public good, which is supposed to be provided free by the government. And so it's impossible to build a revenue model, not impossible, very difficult to build a revenue model which can sustain itself. So the real question on innovative financing, to address the question, is what can be done to by the public sector, by municipalities, by central governments, and by development institutions to co-opt private capital to solve this problem, because they cannot do it on their own. And the second is that for every rupee spent on this particular intervention, which is critical, how can we actually maximize the return on that investment? And not from a financial perspective, but from a social perspective, which indirectly is a financial perspective. And so I'd like to just highlight a few techniques where what we call in parlance at Asha Impact and others do as blended finance, where essentially you bring in private capital and public capital together to solve an intervention. and where the public capital is, in essence, when I say public, I mean both direct government spending at different levels, but also development institution spending, is where that public capital actually de-risks the private capital, so you can bring in and encourage private capital to kind of come into this intervention and co-opt it. So some examples of how this could potentially be done. One is the whole area of social impact bonds and development impact bonds. It's hard for me in a short period of time to go through extensive detail on that. But in a nutshell, what it is that there's an intervention, in this case, WASH, and WASH has various interventions that are critical. Rather than the government or the municipality spending directly initially on that particular intervention, you bring in private capital to do that. You hire 3 or 4 service providers. You set very specific targets to those service providers to, for the intervention, and measure that over the next 3-4 years. And if those interventions and the targets are met, then the government or the development institution only at that point in time would they, or over the period of the social investment bond, write checks into the intervention, and the risk investors who put the money in initially would get their money back. And if the intervention is met in full, they not just would get their money back, they may get a return, or would get a return on it as well. And so in this way, you are bringing in private capital initially. You are de-risking it by having the public capital at in visibility, and the payments are only made if the interventions are met. So therefore, the return on that social investment is high, or potentially is high. So we've, for example, at Asha Impact, we've been leaders in various sectors, including WASH. We've looked at healthcare and education, agriculture. But we've been working, on an urban sanitation impact bond. In fact, with, at the behest of Dr. Meera at CEPT, to really create a social impact bond around the WASH areas. And this particular one is focused on 15 cities and ULBs around Maharashtra. It will involve hiring 3 or 4 service providers. The service providers will be given specific targets. Asha Impact would go and find the risk investors to invest in this. And then the local municipalities and ULBs, if those interventions are met, would pay the risk investors their principal plus a potential return if the targets are met in full. And examples of these really would be, for example, scheduled desludging. And a key indicator potentially could be of the service provider is the number of septic tanks desludged. And you could set a target of 80, 90%, a pretty high target compared to the current achievement. And only if those targets are met would the municipalities and ULBs make those payments. Another one could be potentially a fecal sludge and septic treatment kind of intervention, where total volume of septic treatment is really what per prescribed standards is only if those volumes are met, then the payments are made. So these are innovative techniques. There's been a social impact bond like this for the water distribution system in Cambodia, which has worked well. It's early days in these. These are hard to construct. They're complicated. But given the magnitude of the problem, there's something that we should definitely think about and focus on. In addition to that, blended finance can involve providing guarantees, again, where you are through public intervention, you're providing guarantees to private capital to make investments. They could be build, operate, transfer projects. There's an example, a very interesting example in Udaipur, where the Udaipur Improvement Trust, partnering up with a private enterprise and the local municipality, essentially have come together to build a fecal sludge treatment plant, which will really be done under a build, operate, and transfer kind of arrangement. Here again, the private capital is only coming in because the municipality is going to be buying this out over a period of time, and the underlying credit worthiness of that municipality is strong, either directly or through guarantees. So there are various mechanisms of doing this. Another one is, and this has happened in microfinance, broadly speaking, but microfinance targeted towards households borrowing money to build toilets, as opposed to borrowing money like in the traditional microfinance model to maybe build a small business. And in this case too, Water.org, for example, has lent or provided guarantees to microfinance institutions who have then been able to borrow in the commercial markets and then go and lend to households for toilets. But that does lend itself or require a behavioral change where people say, well, yeah, I actually am going to borrow money to build a toilet as opposed to, it being an important government project that they should give to me for free. So blended finance, I think, will be a critical mechanism to address this supply-demand imbalance of capital targeted towards SDG 6, which is absolutely critical. Blended finance comes in various forms. We talked about SIBs, DIBs, guarantees, build, operate, transfer projects, guarantees through microfinance institutions. So there are a variety of different mechanisms that one could use. Concessional debt would be another one. Pooled fundings like cooperative fundings, where you bring in capital from different sources and therefore de-risk any particular pool of capital. It's hard for me to go into great depth on that, but I'm very hopeful that innovative financing can play a really important role in leveraging development funding, government funding at all levels in solving this important intervention. Thank you very much.
We come to the end of a very interesting discussion. Deep insights provided to us by a range of top-notch thinkers and speakers and practitioners in this space. I'm sure you're not in any doubt of the importance of financing at every aspect of the value chain. It's when we construct, yes, but also when we use and maintain that infrastructure, and of course, the treatment aspects. And as we look at completing this entire financing of sanitation for the country, our engagement must continue and indeed push to ensure that we continue on this track. We've had a very rich discussion. I don't want to even think of summarizing this because I would never be able to capture the richness. And in the interest of time, I leave you with these deliberations and also with a firm message that we need to continue to innovate, we need to continue to push, we need to look at new ways and also replicate the successful old ways that we have discovered along the way in terms of financing of sanitation. So on that note, let me hand over back to our conference organizers to take us to the next leg of what we have laid out for you today.
Hello, everyone. First and foremost, Sri Kaushal Kishore, Honorable Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs. Sri Durga Shankar Mishra, Secretary Housing and Urban Affairs. Ms. Nana Lal Kidwai, Chair India Sanitation Coalition, dear friend and past President FICCI. Mr. Arun Baroka, Additional Secretary, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, Ministry of Jal Shakti. Dr. Natasha Patel, Chief Executive, India Sanitation Coalition at FICCI. Indian and global heads of corporates, representatives of the development partners, including Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, Aga Khan Foundation, WaterAid India, IRC WASH, Taru Leading Edge, and others. Winners of the ISC-FICCI Sanitation Awards 2021, friends in media, ladies and gentlemen. The nation achieved an ODF status nearly 2 years ago, and we should all be very proud of this achievement because it's by no means an ordinary one. Let me now share the broad components of phase 2 of the Swachh Bharat mission, the current phase which has unfolded recently and is gaining ground more than ever before in the context of water, sanitation, and hygiene, which we collectively call WASH. Sustained behavior change, 100% waste collection and sustainable solid waste management, 100% safe disposal of wastewater, and reuse are going to be the broad areas of focus in the current phase of the urban mission. Similarly, the rural mission phase 2 propositions a unique, convergent and co-financing model wherein apart from budgetary allocations from the center and states, remaining funds are going to be dovetailed from the 15th Finance Commission, MG and REGS, and private sector participation to achieve an ODF sustainable India. Let me talk about the private sector participation in WASH. We at FICCI are aware that the government of India has identified private sector as a key stakeholder towards achieving the mission of an ODF sustainable India. ODF plus and ODF plus cities and wards have been defined as units that sustain their ODF status besides ensuring 100% waste collection and sustainable solid waste management and 100% safe disposal of waste.
इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन के वार्षिक कॉन्क्लेव तथा ISC फिक्की सैनिटेशन अवार्ड समारोह 2021 के इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित आदरणीय हमारे कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर श्री गजेंद्र सिंह शेखावत जी, मंत्रिमंडल में हमारे वरिष्ठ सहकर्मी एवं केंद्रीय मंत्री आदरणीय श्री हरदीप सिंह पुरी जी तथा विभाग के हमारे वरिष्ठ सहयोगी एवं पद्म विभूषण से सम्मानित डॉक्टर रघुनाथ अनंत मासेलकर जी, प्रसिद्ध वैज्ञानिक इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन फिक्की अवार्ड्स के ज्यूरी अध्यक्ष आदरणीय श्री उदय शंकर जी, फिक्की के अध्यक्ष राष्ट्रीय एवं अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उद्योग निकायों के प्रमुख, इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन की अध्यक्षा श्रीमती नैनालाल किदवई जी, इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन की मुख्य कार्यकारी अधिकारी श्रीमती नताशा पटेल जी, बिल व मिलांडा गेट्स व यूनिसेफ तथा अन्य सहयोगी संस्थानों के प्रतिनिधिगण, ISC फिक्की अवार्ड्स के विजेतागण, भाइयों और बहनों, मैं सर्वप्रथम इस कार्यक्रम के और इस समारोह के आयोजकों को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं कि उन्होंने मुझे इस कार्यक्रम में बोलने के लिए अभिभाषण के रूप में आमंत्रित करने का अवसर दिया, इसलिए मैं उनका आभार भी व्यक्त करता हूं। स्वच्छ भारत मिशन शहरी में इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन की भूमिका तथा योगदान के बारे में कुछ कहने के पहले मैं मिशन की कुछ उपलब्धियों के बारे में बताना चाहूँगा। ये इसलिए ज़रूरी है क्योंकि कॉन्क्लेव में उपस्थित प्रतिभागियों में से बहुत लोग ऐसे भी हैं जो लोग इसके बारे में विस्तृत जानकारी जानते हैं पहले से। हो सकता कुछ लोग ऐसे भी हों जो मिशन की उपलब्धियों तथा उनसे उत्पन्न प्रभाव के बारे में विस्तृत जानकारी करना चाहते हो। जैसा कि आपको पता है कि अभी विगत 15 अगस्त 2014 में लाल किले की प्राचीर से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री आदरणीय श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने यह घोषणा किया था कि महात्मा गांधी जी का जो मिशन था स्वच्छता का मिशन, तो स्वच्छ भारत बने, इसके लिए प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 2 अक्टूबर को महात्मा गांधी जी की जयंती के अवसर पर इस अभियान को शुरू करने का निर्णय लिया था। और 2 अक्टूबर 2014 को खुद प्रधानमंत्री जी झाड़ू लेकर के निकले थे और जिससे पूरा देश धीरे धीरे करके आंदोलित हुआ और पूरे देश में एक आंदोलन का रूप लेने का काम किया। तमाम अधिकारी, दफ्तर के लोग, कर्मचारी, लीडर्स, सामाजिक संस्थान से जुड़े लोग, सामाजिक संस्थान चलाने वाले लोग, ये सभी लोग पूरी तरीके से जुड़े और ये तय हुआ कि 2 अक्टूबर 2019 को राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी की जो 150वीं वर्षगांठ होगी, उसको हम तब तक के पूरे देश को हम शहरी क्षेत्र को शौच से मुक्त कर देने का काम करेंगे। पूरे देश में इसके लिए एक अभियान चलाने का काम किया गया और शहर के अंदर जिनके पास शौचालय नहीं थे उनको शौचालय के लिए अलग से योजना देने का काम की गई। केंद्र सरकार ने प्रदेश सरकार से मिलके, निकायों से मिल करके शौचालय उपलब्ध कराना, जहाँ पर मलिन बस्तियाँ थी वहाँ पर सुलभ शौचालय बनाना, ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में भी सुलभ शौचालय बनाना और शौचालय उपलब्ध कराना, ये सारी योजनाओं को प्रधानमंत्री जी ने रखा। और अगर प्रधानमंत्री आवास शहरी और ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में दिए भी तो उसमें भी शौचालय को इंक्लूड करने का काम किया कि ताकि उनको उसका जो मकान आवास मिले उसमें शौचालय वो अपने पास से बना सकें, जिसके लिए उन्होंने पैसा भी प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपनी योजना के तहत उपलब्ध कराने का काम किया। देश का ये सपना कि हमारा देश पूरी तरीके से ODF हो, यानी शौच मुक्त हिंदुस्तान बने, इसके प्रधानमंत्री जी का सपना है और उसको एक आंदोलन के रूप में हमारी केंद्र सरकार ने राज्य सरकारों के साथ मिलकर प्राइवेट सेक्टर और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोगी संस्थानों की भूमिका जो इसमें हमारे साथ जुड़ी है वो एक सराहनीय कार्य है और मैं समझ रहा हूँ एक बड़ी सफलता स्वच्छ भारत को बनाने में इस समय चल रही है और इसके लिए काम भी बड़ी तेज़ी से हो रहा है। ये अभियान 2014 में आरंभ किया गया था। उस समय हमारे देश में शहर में भी खुला पूरी तरीके से शौच मुक्त नहीं था और आज हमारे देश के अंदर करीब 4,369 लगभग 97% शहर खुले में शौच से मुक्त हो चुके हैं और लगभग ODF हो चुके हैं। मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि 2014 के पहले का अगर पीरियड देखें तो इस तरह की टारगेट टाइम बाउंड समय निर्धारित इस तरह की कोई योजनाएं नहीं आई थी जिसकी वजह से भारत को स्वच्छ भारत बनाने का काम किया जा सके। आज 62 लाख से अधिक वैज्ञानिक शौचालयों का निर्माण पूरा कर जो है 62 लाख से अधिक वैयक्तिक शौचालय जो अच्छे शौचालय बनते हैं उन तरीके के बना करके उसका पूरा करने का काम लगभग संभव हो चुका है। मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं कि जो सूचना उपलब्ध है उसके अनुसार 2005 से 2014 के बीच कोई 40,000 सार्वजनिक सामुदायिक शौचालयों का निर्माण किया गया था। गर्व का विषय ये है कि उनमें से लगभग 65,000 शौचालयों की ट्रैकिंग गूगल नक्शों पर आज की तिथि पर संभव है और इस तकनीक से इन शौचालयों की उपलब्धता था उनकी कार्यात्मकता का निर्धारण आसानी से किया जा सकता है। आज लगभग हमारे देश में 3305 यानी 73% शहर ODF प्लस तथा 1000 से कम के आसपास शहर ODF प्लस प्लस प्रमाणित किए जा चुके हैं। इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित सभी भाइयों बहनों, राष्ट्र इस लक्ष्य पर एकजुट है कि वर्ष 2022 तक शहर तथा वर्ष 2024 तक पूरे देश यानी शहर और ग्रामीण क्षेत्र को मिला करके हम ODF प्लस प्लस बनाना चाहते हैं और इसके लिए एक पूरा लक्ष्य टाइम बाउंड तरीके से निर्धारित करने का कार्यक्रम हमारी सरकार के द्वारा, केंद्र सरकार के द्वारा किया जा रहा है। हमारे विभाग के द्वारा भी इसको किया जा रहा है। शहरी मिशन के वर्तमान चरण की यदि हम बात करें तो स्वच्छता के प्रति निरंतर अब व्यवहार में परिवर्तन आ रहा। 100% कचरा मुक्त यानी इकट्ठा करके हमको कचरा मुक्त शहर बनाने हैं। जो ठोस कचरा प्रबंधन है उसको सीवेज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगा करके सीवेज पानी तथा मानव मल का जो 100% सुरक्षित निस्तारण करना मिशन के मुख्य हमारे उद्देश्य हैं। और जो मिशन है उस मिशन के जो अधिकारी हैं तथा जो कर्मचारी हैं इनकी मदद से इस मिशन को पूरी तरीके से पूरा समय के निर्धारित जो काल है उसी पीरियड में इसको पूरा करना में हमको मदद मिलेगी। हमारी जो सरकार है भारत सरकार इस बात को लेकर पूरी तरीके से जागरूक और संवेदनशील है कि बिना प्राइवेट सेक्टर की सहभागिता के राज्य सरकारों सहित केंद्र सरकार के लिए उपलब्ध समय में मिशन के उद्देश्यों की पूर्ति एक मुश्किल काम है। नामुमकिन तो नहीं है लेकिन मुश्किल है। लेकिन ये सबकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि चूँकि हम पूरी तरीके से देश को हम स्वच्छ बनाएं, इसलिए सबकी अपनी खुद की जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि इसको पूर्णतया निभाने का काम करें और इस स्वच्छ भारत मिशन में योगदान करने का काम करें। अगर आप देखें तो ऐसी परिस्थितियों में इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन जो उद्योग इकाइयों के सबसे बड़े फिक्की में स्थित हैं की भूमिका भी अहम है और इस भूमिका को उनको निभाना भी है। मुझे आशा नहीं इस बल्कि इस तरह का पूरा विश्वास है कि उद्योगी इकाइयों के सबसे बड़े संघ फिक्की की भूमिका कुछ समय पर अपने नेतृत्व में उनका योगदान सुनिश्चित करने कि इंडिया सैनिटेशन कोएलिशन एक महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाने का काम करेगा और इनके सहयोग से हम मिशन के लक्ष्य को प्राप्त करने में पूरी तरह सक्षम रहेंगे। इसलिए वो जिम्मेदारी बनती है क्योंकि वो हमारे देश के ही अंग हैं और देश में ही को स्वच्छ बनाने में उनकी पूरी मदद की ज़रूरत भी हमें है। मैं इंडिया सैनिटाइजेशन कोएलिशन फिक्की स्वच्छता अवार्ड्स 2021 के विजेताओं को बधाई देना चाहता हूं कि उन्होंने अच्छा काम कर ये साबित किया कि हम स्वच्छता के क्षेत्र में कितने आत्मनिर्भर हैं। अपने देश को न केवल खुले में शौच से मुक्त कराने के लिए बल्कि ठोस और तरल कचरा प्रबंधन की समस्या का समाधान कर देश के सभी शहरों को ODF प्लस करने और वाटर प्लस करने के लिए भी प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अभी विगत 1 अक्टूबर को अमृत योजना, अमृत 2.0 और स्वच्छ भारत मिशन 2.0 को लॉन्च करने का काम किया था, जिसका अभी जल्दी में ही उसकी गाइडलाइन को भी जारी कर देने का काम किया गया है। तो मैं आप सब लोगों से अनुरोध करना चाहता हूं कि भारत को स्वच्छ बनाने में, शौच मुक्त पूरी तरीके से करने में, पेयजल की शुद्ध पानी की व्यवस्था लोगों के घरों तक पहुंचाने में, सीवेज की समस्या का पूरा निस्तारण करने में, कचरा मुक्त शहर बनाने में, ये अकेले जिम्मेदारी केवल सरकार की नहीं है बल्कि आपकी भी पूरी जिम्मेदारी है कि हम आप सब मिलकर अपने देश को पूरी तरीके से कचरा मुक्त, शौच मुक्त प्लस और स्वच्छ भारत बनाने में हम इतना काम करें कि ताकि हमारे देश का नाम पूरी दुनिया में एक स्वच्छ भारत के रूप में, स्वच्छ देश के रूप में जाए। ये मैं आपसे अपील करना चाहता हूँ और ये मैं आपसे आग्रह करना चाहता हूँ। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
morning, Mr. Baruka, and
Good morning.
welcome to this fireside chat, sir. First of all, let me congratulate you on your empanelment as Secretary Government of India. This is a great honor for us to be here, to be able to congratulate you in person like this and have you accept our invitation. So again, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I want to start with at the beginning. So, we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who in 2014 announced something which was absolutely disbelievable by a lot of Indians, which was the Swachh Bharat campaign. And something that had never happened in this country. He said, within 5 years' time, I am going to make India ODF free. And that is exactly what happened, sir. 5 years, and we declared in 2019 that as a country, we are ODF free. That was an amazing, amazing achievement. Practically internationally, everybody was talking about it. And as far as you're concerned, you've been with this mission right from the beginning. And you've seen exactly the kind of challenges that it has had. What is it that India has had to go through to be able to achieve this success? So can you share with us your thoughts? What were the primary thoughts that you have on this?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for appreciating the success of the program. Swachh Bharat mission, as you are aware, was started more in terms of common understanding. It is a Clean India campaign. It aimed at first of all to eliminate the open defecation problem in the country, and the open defecation was there in its different form in rural areas, and we began in 2014, but the real work had started sometime in 2015 and 16. So I had joined the mission in 2016, and I'm continuing in the second phase also. Now I'm part of the mission. So if you analyze in retrospect that what are the factors behind the success of the program, then you will find that first of all, as you have yourself mentioned, that it was initiated, being led by Honorable PM himself. He initiated it. He announced it on 15th August 2014, and then we began this. The mission, this was converted into a mission, which was known as Swachh Bharat Mission. The mission's success will not be dependent on just announcements. It will have to be backed by proper funding also, public funding particularly. And in this case, public funding was provided from Government of India, and not only from Government of India, but from states also. That is a major difference in this program. Now, what kind of funding is required? At that stage, if we want to convert, if we want to have toilets for everyone, we need to provide the financial support for people. And we provided that. We provided the incentive at the rate of rupees 12,000 per household to the families which were not having the toilets. And in rural India, almost to the extent of almost 85 to 90% households were provided this financial incentive. So almost about 10 crore toilets have been constructed in the program till now, much more than that. Now, this is the initial part of it. Now, any program will succeed, and particularly this kind of program where behavior change is required. So here, proper communication has to happen, and that proper communication means the communication relating to change in behavior, and that can happen not only through mass media but also through interpersonal communication. So this became the biggest behavior change program through all the combined efforts of mass media as well as the people down below, particularly the leadership down below. At the level of chief ministers and at the district level, at the level of collectors, the chief executive officers, and also the sarpanches and also the natural leaders, which we call them as Swachhagrahis. The special term was coined as Swachhagrahis. So like earlier in the freedom struggle, we had Satyagrahis. Here we are having Swachhagrahis. So this was the kind of leadership which was there at the top, but then when it went down, it became people's movement. Everyone started participating. It became a Jan Andolan. So So that is another aspect of the success factor. The other factor is that it was not just vertically that everyone was involved, but also in Government of India, people were involved. All the ministries were involved. It became part of their budget also. They had to provide budget for their sanitation related activities, Swachhata related activities. So 76 ministries started having the budget provision in their departments. And we are very happy to note that they have dedicated activities. Notable amongst them is RD, Rural Development, and the Railways Department. They have done tremendous work. But obviously, railways required. We continue to have the problem relating to railways, so they needed a lot of support. So it became just not this department's business; it became everyone's business, and all the departments of Government of India were involved in these activities. So, in short, I would say that the political leadership at the top level and at the bottom also, bottom in the sense at the state level and also at the field level, the collectors, CEOs, and Swachhagrahis, the national leaders, and then obviously it was being backed by the public funding which we had provided, and it became people's movement. Everyone was participating, not only the government machinery, but the private sector and even development partners. In fact, private sector started their own campaigns parallelly along with the government's campaign. They were so motivated that they were having their own campaigns. They were undertaking a lot of activities at their own level. They have been providing support not only financially, but also in kind. So in brief, it has become a people's movement in changing the behavior of people, and we have seen that these are the important success. But the journey has not ended here. Let me caution everyone that sanitation is a problem to be attended all the time. You can't say that now we have achieved the target on 2nd October 2019. No more work is required to be done. There's a lot of work still to be done.
Thank you, sir. That was a really good beginning, and I think delegates would be very, very happy to hear this. I think there was one aspect of SPM1 where specifically in the rural area we were very successful, and I would be very grateful if you can share with us your thoughts around treatment, specifically around decentralized versus centralized treatment plants. This is a conundrum that we are all grappling with. It's a challenge for both for urban and rural, but I think rural has achieved considerable success in this space. So what are the learnings that you believe we should take away from this?
So in rural sector, if we analyze the problems and the situation, it is very different than the urban. Urban is grappling with the problem of solid and liquid waste management. But in rural, the main problem earlier was open defecation that we have been, to a great extent, we have been able to address. Still gaps are there. We are addressing them and under the campaign of no one to be left behind. The other characteristics of the rural problem is that we have solid waste and liquid waste whose quantum is less. The characteristics are different. Let's say the characteristics. We get more of green waste, which can be easily composted, so that or maybe reused in the form of feed to the animals. Cow dung is there, that can also be reused. People are more conscious to reuse rather than in urban areas. Now the other issue, all these are not really very harmful waste products. These can be handled, but the most harmful waste product is the fecal material. Now fecal material, as long as we are able to contain it and we are not disposing it in the environment, it is not harmful. The best solution is the twin pit toilet. So twin pit is in situ treatment plant, which can take care of all the pathogens. It decomposes the fecal material in one pit at a time, and while we are using the other pit. But let's say we are not using the twin pit and we are using either single pit or maybe if we are having septic tank, or if we are having defective kind of a toilet, then there is a problem. How do you tackle that? So we have learned from the experience of phase 1 that let's say we have about 1/3 of the total number of toilets to be twin pit kind of toilets, which are not having much of problem. But then there is a problem with respect to either septic tank or single pit, because they need to be, after they get filled up, after 5-6 years, they need to be evacuated. And what do you do with that? And let's say if the septic tank is defective, we're not having any soak pit attached with that, or there is some other problem by which it is overflowing, then again the fecal material is coming into the environment, village environment, and obviously it becomes equally problematic, just like open defecation. So how do you tackle that? For that, we worked out a strategy that started doing in sometime in 2019 itself. In fact, one of the lessons which we learned in phase 1 itself, in between maybe around period of 2017-18, that we should be exclusively focusing on twin pit toilets. Because earlier technology was not being promoted that way, that only twin pit should be done. That is the best solution, low cost solution, instead of septic tank which costs maybe about 50 to 60,000, but this costs hardly 15,000 rupees. It is so cheap. So, and obviously environmentally it is sustainable. So we started learning at that stage in 2017-18, and we started focusing on twin pit. Now in phase 2, when we are there in phase 2, we have the problem in the sense that we have existing stock of single pit toilets as well as septic tank, because generally people prefer septic tank. That is general people's preference. We have seen even in census towns, that means close to the towns, even in towns, people are having septic tank. That needs to be evacuated. When you evacuate it, where do you take the material, the fecal material? So that is a challenge, and that is being addressed in phase 2 of the program. We have the funding provisions also. We have provided the technical guidance also for that purpose. Then the other learning which we have started from phase 1 itself is how do you handle solid and liquid waste management, particularly the solid waste, and also the plastic waste, which has also gone into rural areas.
Yes.
Earlier it was just restricted to urban areas. So plastic waste, how do you handle it? Then how do you handle the cow dung? You should not be treating that as a waste. It should be treated as a resource. So we are exclusively focusing on the cow dung also. So these are the problem areas which were there in earlier program, or rather which we have found out, and these have been converted into opportunities, and we are trying to convert the waste into wealth. So that is a learning which we have adopted in phase 2 of the program. And the other thing which I must say, now we are realizing that we need to, all the program, they need to work together, both urban as well as rural, because plastic as well as the fecal sludge is a problem which is common to both.
Exactly.
So this is one learning, and which we have trying to tell everyone that we need to work together. At Government of India level, we are working together, but at states also.
Yeah. So, sir, just picking up on that, one of the things that is a concern is, should we continue to look at STPs as the solution for the future, or is FSTP a more practical and economic solution? In your view, given the fact that now urban and rural are coming together quite closely with regards to solving their problems and issues, what do you think? What would you believe is the most beneficial to India?
So STP has its own area of operation, and FSTP has its sort of different kind of advantages which STP doesn't have. So for rural areas, I would say that FSTP is the best solution. First, it is low cost, low gestation period, and it doesn't require the sewer networks which are required for a STP. Secondly, for urban areas, that means census towns also, it will be very helpful. The other advantage with the FSTP is that you don't require land, and in urban areas as well as in census towns you require land. So all the STPs generally they are located outside the city, and sometimes they go into the villages out in the outskirts of the towns. So looking at all these aspects, we feel that FSTPs are better solutions. FSTPs with the investment of let's say about 1 to 2 crore can be easily done in 1 year, less than 1 year. STP probably may require not less than 100 crores, 60 crores, something like that. So looking at per capita investment and the kind of benefits which we are getting from FSTP, I would recommend FSTPs. FSTPs are the answer for all the future problems. They are the decentralized solutions. For in STP, you need to have a centralized plant, and for that you need to have the network of sewer lines. And the problem anywhere can create a problem for STP.
Right.
Let's say if you have invested 100 crore rupees on a STP, something goes wrong with that, and generally STPs are being underused, then 100 crore investment has gone waste. But let's say if only 2 crores you have spent in FSTP, if something goes wrong with that 2 crore FSTP plant, it is not a big loss for anyone.
Yeah.
So looking at the cost effectiveness as well as the overall environmental benefit, I would say FSTP is a better solution. We have included FSTPs as an important strategic element in our phase 2 of the program as a lesson from phase 1.
Right.
Even 2.0 SBM of urban is also focusing on the FSTPs in a big way.
Okay, that's good to know, sir. I want to now just focus on SPM2. This is our future. And I think the very big ask from the Prime Minister himself is sustainability. The question, sir, is around the ability, because now it's all about technical knowledge. How do you think our people are placed in the field to be able to manage to achieve the various requirements of SPM2? Do you think that we need more technical training to be provided to them? How are they prepared to meet these challenges?
So sustainability is a very important thing, and on the role of the people, that is also very important. But generally speaking, about the sustainability, that is the important plank of phase 2 of Swachh Bharat mission. And the sustainability has different dimensions. First of all, we need to ensure that people do not slip back and they do not start going for open defecation. So we need to ensure that people continue to use toilets. And for that, obviously, the behavior change communication is very important. The kind of stress which we were giving earlier, that needs to continue. So all those who are not having the toilet, or all those who were somehow left out because they are new and emerging households, they need to be provided. So we are continuing to provide the financial incentive to those people. So simultaneously, the households whose toilets get broken or become dysfunctional, they also need to be repaired so that they continue to use. So when we are able to attend to this problem, then we can focus on the other plank of phase 2, which is the solid and liquid waste management.
Exactly.
And for that, we require a lot of technical support, and for that, we require a lot of capacity building. So that is one gap area. The rural problems are slightly different than the urban problems. When people talk about solid and liquid waste management, they see only the urban areas. They don't visualize a rural setting. That if you invest 1/10 of the time energy, then you will be able to convert a village into a very successful model kind of a ideal kind of a village. So capacity building is different in, first of all, requirement is much more. Requirements in terms of numbers probably would be less. Probably you can come out with a holistic solution in a village rather than in a city.
Absolutely,
You are working either on the solid waste or on the liquid waste, and they are different kind of departments which are looking after. But in rural settings, we have single department, and panchayats play a very important role. So they can very easily convert a village into an ideal kind of a village, a model village. And here, even little bit of capacity improvement, capacity strengthening at with the development machinery, particularly the BDOs and the Js, etc., and the sarpanches and the sachivs and the swachhagrahis and the villagers themselves, it will help in a big way. So that is one gap area on which we are working in a big way. We have come out with the technical manuals, which are very easy to use and very colorful, with a lot of visualizations and graphics and clear technical solutions for different kind of problems. These have been provided, and then obviously they need to be conveyed to the people also. We are doing the capacity building exercise at all levels, not only for the collectors, the CDOs, CEOs, BDOs, etc. also, but also the sensitization of the political leadership, particularly the elected representatives at the district level, block level, and at the GP level, the Gram Panchayat level. So once they are sensitized and once they understand that this problem is having this solution, they will immediately on their own also they will work out. People are not fools. Once they know that this is a problem, a village can come out with a solution which is better than what we have visualized. So this is our experience in phase 1, and even in limited experience of phase 2, we find that nudging works better than imposing anything on them.
That's very true, sir. Actually, taking one with you makes that decision sustainable. So I can understand that. Let's just come to water, sir. The crux of any success that we achieve with sanitation lies in having the right amount of water, right? And we all know that India's water levels, groundwater levels, are very, very low. In fact, the lowest in the world. How does one deal with that from a rural perspective? How do you see us being able to refurbish some of our ground aquifers and manage our water pools in going forward?
So, water conservation and water conservation somehow has become a very important element for us. We see the grey water management as important activity, and we are focusing that as one of the important elements of phase 2 of Swachh Bharat mission. And we are providing funding also for that, and also technical solutions have been provided, not only at the household level, but also at the community level. Right. Simple example is the soak pit. Right. Soak pit at the household level can recharge the ground level very easily. And it also helps to resolve the problem of the wastewater, particularly the wastewater which is being generated in the kitchens as well as in the bathrooms. Now, when there is a large scale water and when it gets mixed up with the black water, fortunately, black water is to great extent lesser in the rural setting. Then you need to come out with a community level solution. For that also, we are providing funding as well as technical solutions we have provided to them in the form of waste stabilization ponds or different kind of solutions which we have provided. And for that capacity building, as you had discussed earlier, that is being provided at that level. So we are not restricting ourselves to just at the household level or at the level of the community, but we are also trying to make sure that the wastewater, either in the form of grey water or black water, doesn't enter into the water bodies, either in the form of ponds or lakes or maybe the rivers and the nalas. So whenever the water enters there, we should ensure that it is treated properly. The other aspect of this is to ensure that plastics do not contaminate the water bodies. So that is also being addressed parallelly. So the kind of solutions which we are providing, we have seen the immediate results. Wherever in a hand pump in a village or the public stand post is there, if you have soak pit, generally if all the stand posts are having the soak pits, it is found that the water table has gone up. So this is how we are, and as a part of the ministry, we had started this Jal Shakti Abhiyan in the year 2019, and that is being continued in phase 2. COVID didn't allow us to do phase 2 last year, but this year we had started, and that is being managed by our department and within the ministry, another department. Earlier we had managed it. So grey water management, water conservation, water recycling, water reuse, these have become part and parcel of our program. And we not only we are providing technical guidance, but we are also providing the funding.
That's great to know, sir. I think there can only be one more question that I would want to ask you in this subject, and that is around the encouragement of startups. Water and sanitation is the one sector where startups are not that many as, say, in the agri sector or in energy or in any of the others. And I just wanted to understand from you, do you see space to encourage innovation through startups for water and sanitation, specifically for the rural sector, sir?
In fact, since not many people have worked, I think there is a lot of scope, and for that reason, we recently had started a campaign also.
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to get solutions specific for the rural sector with respect to solid and liquid waste management, and we had started a competition, and we have invited all the startups. We have got the initial round, we have got about 300 or so registrations, and we are seeking detailed solutions from them. We hope that we'll be able to come out with great solutions. As I had explained earlier, the problems in rural area are different than the problems in urban area. So there could be some unique solutions which probably we are missing out. And if a startup can come out with that, we'll be able to have a solution which is low cost, and we, with the locally available materials, we are able to do locally, people can manage it. That becomes a very good solution. Absolutely. These are the basic principles which we are adopting while coming out with the solution. We had earlier, we had with the collaboration with the Ministry of Social Justice, we tried to do about 2 years back. Hackathon was done wherein we tried to get solutions for disabled people. So we got very good response at that stage also. That was more for the Ministry of Social Justice on their request. But this time we are focusing exclusively on solid and liquid waste management, and that too in the rural. Simple solution, let's say, how do you eliminate the manual scavenging? So people have come out with robotic arm and robotic solutions. Can they be applied in rural area, and that to more than 600,000 villages when we have to evacuate? Right. I think the solution could be something else also. We got a IIT Chennai has given some solutions to us recently. We are trying to evaluate that. So there could be different solutions for the problem of evacuation, for the problem of cleaning the water before it goes into the water body, and to have solutions to treat the fecal material fast. It takes about 6 months for fecal material to decompose in a single pit or in the twin pit toilet. In one pit, if you allow, 6 months it takes. So how can we expedite that? So we got a small solution. Somebody gave a solution that you put it in the pit, it decomposes very fast. So this is also one solution.
Absolutely.
So this way we are trying to find out the solutions which will help us to manage all these waste, and these can be converted into wealth also, particularly with respect to cow dung. Cow dung, we are calling it as a special program of Govardhan, converting gobar into wealth. And herein there are various issues in Govardhan program. So how do you convert it fast? First of all, how do you take advantage of all the byproducts of the process of decomposition of gobar? Because you get not only compost, but you also get the sludge or other slurry. We call it slurry. So in the slurry, a lot of water is there. How do you handle that? Even that slurry can be used for the purposes of fertilizer. So that one can be a good substitute for the fertilizer. for the inorganic fertilizer, particularly chemical fertilizer. How can we convert the gas into compressed biogas, compress it at a low cost? We are compressing it, but it is involving a lot of cost. And how do you transmit that? There are the gas pipelines of IGL, but how do you do it in large scale? How do you scale it up? So this is a challenge, and this fits into very well into the overall mission of converting waste into wealth. So these are the things wherein the startups or technology providers or anyone else, industry people can also provide us the solution. But till now, people have been focusing on the urban areas because there is a lot of visibility there, and the problems are visible. The stacks of the waste which are lying in either Mukarba Chowk or in South Delhi. So these are visible to everyone. So they want to focus on that. But in rural areas, tremendous opportunities are there at very low cost. And if we try to exploit that, we'll be able to convert waste into wealth. We'll be able to add to the national income as well as the income for the farmers also.
Thank you, sir. It's very encouraging because a lot of our delegates are young startups or even students or professors who are working in large research organizations in India who are looking at various solutions, specifically both for rural and urban, but rural definitely. So they'll be very encouraged by your words. Even at the ISC, the India Sanitation Coalition, one of the things that we are starting this year is what we call the Rashid Kidwai Innovation and Sanitation Awards. This is in memory of our co-founder, Mr. Kidwai, who passed away earlier this year. And this is just to encourage young minds to come up with solutions so that they benefit us in the long run. So this is very good to hear from you, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for this. This has been a very great opportunity for us to talk to you, to hear your views, and hopefully that we can actually partner with the ministry along with the coalition partners themselves in taking forward your ideas and the Prime Minister's ideas. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम फरजाना यूसुफ पठान है। मैं अम्मनेर में गांधीपुरे में रहती हूँ। मेरे वहाँ टॉयलेट नहीं था तो इतनी दिक्कतें आती थी कि बच्चों को स्कूल में ले जाने से पहले तो टॉयलेट के लिए बाहर ले जाना पड़ता था। वहाँ से आते थे, हाथ पाँव कुछ धोते नहीं थे, हमारे वहाँ बीमारियाँ आती थी, फिर हमें दवाखाने में जाना पड़ता था। 1000-2000 रुपये हमें वहाँ पर लगाना पड़ता था। फिर कभी हम बीमार पड़ते थे, हमें भी डबल से जाना पड़ता था। इसके लिए हमारे को बहुत ही तकलीफ होती थी। इस वजह से हमने क्या बोलते, फिर हमारे घर वालों को बोला तो नहीं मानते थे। फिर हमारी एमएसटी की महिलाएं आई और उन्होंने वो बहनाओं ने हमें बोला कि आपके घर में टॉयलेट नहीं। हमने हमारी परेशानी उनको बताई। फिर उन्होंने बोला क्या आपके घर में टॉयलेट बनाओ। फिर हमने हमारे घर में टॉयलेट बनाया और उसको यूज़ करते हुए बनाने के बाद में क्या बोलते 3 महीने बाद कोरोना लग गया। तो उसकी वजह से हमारी गली की महिलाएं जाती थी बाहर संगात के लिए, तो उन्हें मुसीबत झेलना पड़ती थी। जैसा कोरोना की बीमारी का डर रहता था, फिर क्या बोलते बच्चों के लिए डर लगता था, पुलिस वाले बोलते थे। आज कभी हमारे घर में नहीं रहता था टॉयलेट तो हमें भी वो मुसीबत का सामना करना पड़ता था। जैसे हम जाते थे तो हमें बोलते थे पुलिस वाले कि आप कहाँ जा रहे हो, ऐसा क्या तुम्हें मालूम नहीं है क्या कोरोना की बीमारी चालू है कि क्या है। इस वजह से क्या बोलते हमें बहुत ही मुसीबत आती थी। और जैसा धूपकाले में, ठंडकाले में, बरसात में तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा दिक्कतें आती थी। सर टॉयलेट नहीं था हमारे घर में, क्या बरसात आती थी, फिर ऐसे खुले में जाते थे, वही खुले में मच्छर रहते थे, वही मच्छरों की बीमारी हम लेके आते थे। हाथ पाँव नहीं धोते थे, कुछ नहीं करते थे हम। और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हमारा टाइम काम धंधे में और टॉयलेट में और दवाखानों में पैसे बहुत जाते थे। इस वजह से हमने हमारे घर में टॉयलेट बनाया, टॉयलेट का इस्तेमाल करते हैं। और आज हम वो पैसे हमारे बचते हैं तो हमारा थोड़ा बहुत टाइम भी वेस्ट नहीं होता है। जो टाकने टुकने का काम करते हैं वो भी हो जाता है। और हमारी गली में महिलाएं जाती थी कोरोना के टाइम पे तो उन्हें इतनी मुसीबत झेलना पड़ती थी। जैसे पुलिस वाले बोलते थे क्या मास्क नहीं लगा रहे, बड़े बूढ़े जा रहे हैं, उन्हें इतनी मुसीबत होती थी। तो हमने एमएसटी को धन्यवाद करते हैं कि आपने हमें ये सुझाव दिया और ये सुझाव पे हम चले, इसके लिए आपका सबका धन्यवाद करते।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम पल्लवी विकास सुतार है। मैं अमरनेर के ताड़ेपुरा में रहती हूँ। मेरा मायका गुजरात का है और मैं एक गृहिणी हूँ। मैं अमरनेर में 6 साल से रह रही हूँ। मैं 12वीं तक पढ़ी हूँ और मेरा शिक्षण गुजरात की आनंद जगह में हुआ है। मैं शादी करके अमरनेर में आई। जब मैं ससुराल में आई तब पता चला कि वहाँ पर शौचालय नहीं है। मेरे मायके में शौचालय था। शौचालय के बिना कैसे रहना मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा था। जगह नहीं थी, कहाँ जाना मदद के लिए पता नहीं था और उस पर शौच के लिए बाहर जाने को बोला गया था। तो मुझे एकदम से झटका लगा कि मैं यहाँ पे नहीं हूँ, मैं यहाँ की बहू हो तो कैसे मैं जाऊँ। मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था, शर्म सी आती थी। जब मैंने आसपास पूछा तब पता चला कि ताड़ेपुरा में कई घरों में शौचालय नहीं था। आसपास की महिलाओं ने बताया कि सर पर पल्लू लेकर बाहर शौच के लिए जाना पड़ता है, सुबह जल्दी उठकर जाना पड़ता है, देर रात को जाने से डर लगता है। तो मुझे नहीं पाती, मैं डर लगता था तो जा ही नहीं पाती थी। मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था और फिर पूरा दिन शौच रोक कर रखना पड़ता था, जिसकी वजह से मेरे पेट में दर्द होता था। मैंने अपने घर वालों को काफ़ी बोला कि समझाने की कोशिश की कि वो घर में शौचालय बनवा दें, पर किसी ने मेरी बात नहीं सुनी। वे कहते रहे कि पैसे की कमी है, नगर पालिका कभी गए नहीं थे तो कैसे पता चलेगा। तो पता ही नहीं चल रहा था कि क्या करें। मेरे लिए शौचालय न होने की चिंता तब और ज़्यादा बढ़ गई थी जब मैं गर्भवती थी। मैं उस अवस्था में मुझे बहुत दिक्कतें आने लगी थी। कभी भी शौच के लिए बाहर जाना पड़ता था और जाना पड़ता था तो ऐसा बहुत मुश्किल था। बारिश के मौसम में कीचड़ की वजह से पाँव फिसलने का डर रहता था। इस वजह से मैंने खाना भी कम कर दिया था ताकि मुझे शौच के लिए बाहर ना जाना पड़े, जिसका असर मेरे घर पर पड़ने लगा। मुझे लगा था कि मैं डिलीवरी के लिए मेरे मायके चली जाऊँ तो अच्छा रहता, लेकिन ससुराल वाले लोग समझ ही नहीं सकते थे मेरे को। तभी मेरा संपर्क MST की महिलाओं से हुआ। उन्होंने मुझे शौचालय के महत्व के बारे में बताया। उन्होंने हमें तालीम दी और सारी मूलभूत सुविधाओं के बारे में बताया। पोस्टर्स और वीडियो बता के शौचालय के बारे में और सरकार से मिलने वाली सब्सिडी के बारे में पूरी जानकारी दी। उन्होंने मुझे घर में शौचालय बनाने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया। जानकारी मिलने पर मुझ में हिम्मत आई और मैंने उन्हें अपनी दिक्कतें बताई और मैंने घर वालों को समझाने को कहा। फिर हमने मिलकर घर वालों को शौचालय बनवाने के लिए मना लिया। अब शौचालय बनाने के बाद समय में मेरे सामने दूसरी मुश्किल खड़ी हुई, वो थी पानी की असुविधा। अमरनेर में 5 से 8 दिन में एक बार पानी आता है। तो अब मुद्दा ये था कि शौचालय बना तो दे, लेकिन उसकी साफ सफाई के लिए पानी तो चाहिए, उसे इस्तेमाल करने के लिए भी पानी चाहिए। MST की तालीम लेने के बाद हमने 12 महिलाओं का CAG ग्रुप मंडल बनाया और मैंने उस मीटिंग के बारे में बात करी कि पानी ही नहीं है तो शौचालय बनवा के क्या फ़ायदा, क्या करेंगे। तब MST ने बताया कि ताड़ेपुरा में एक कुआं है जो सालों से बंद है। अगर उसे वापस जिंदा कर दे तो पानी की दिक्कत दूर हो सकती है। हमने MST के साथ मिलकर बोला तो वो बोल रहे थे कि ठीक है, हम देखते हैं क्या करने का क्या नहीं। लेकिन वो ताड़ेपुरा में एक कुआं है, वो बंद था। अगर उसे वापस जिंदा कर दे तो पानी की दिक्कत तो दूर हो सकती है, ये बात भी सही है। हमने MST के साथ मिलकर मीटिंग करके और सब लोगों की सहमति ली और कुएं को वापस जिंदा करने की बात की। उन्होंने मीटिंग में रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग की टेक्निक के बारे में बताया और बताया कि कैसे आसपास के घरों के छतों से पानी कुएं में डालेंगे। हमने काम शुरू करवाया और ध्यान रखा कि काम अच्छे से हो रहा है। कुआं पूरा होने पर उसमें काफ़ी सारा पानी आया। उसके बाद मैंने मेरे घर में आखिर में शौचालय बना दिया। शौचालय बनने पर जैसे सभी समस्याएं हल हो गई। अब न शौच रोकने की ज़रूरत है और ना ही रात को जाने की चिंता। कुएं के पानी से सिर्फ मेरे घर में पानी ही की समस्या ही नहीं, पर ताड़ेपुरा की पानी की मुश्किलें कम हो गई और ताड़ेपुरा में बहुत लोगों ने अपने शौचालय का काम किया। यह कुआं हमें कोरोना के लॉकडाउन के समय भी बहुत काम आया। जब लॉकडाउन था और हम पानी लेने नहीं पाते थे, तब हम इसी कुएं से पानी लेते थे।